Hey everybody, Steve Prasbrowski here. Welcome to tip number 37 in the series 101 Tips to Ace Your Promotional Exam. As a reminder, my website, Code 3 Fire Training, is a great resource for lots of great free information for all ranks of personnel. And also, this series is based on my new book from Fire Engineering Books and Videos, 101 Tips to Ace Your Promotional Exam, available off their website, as well as my website too. And also on the bottom of the green box, nice 25% off code if you don't have it. So, and if you already do have it, thank you very much for your support. So let's get going. So in a couple of the previous tips, in tip number 35, we discussed reviewing the job specification or the job description, whatever it's called, same concept, to ensure that you're qualified to actually apply for the position. And hopefully you've done that years in advance so you can create your roadmap for where you need to be or where you need to go to get where you want to be. And then in tip 36, we sort of built upon that, and we discussed reviewing your department's latest promotional announcement. And I shared one of our recent fire captain announcements in tip 36, so you know what you're looking for there. Now we're going to take it to the next step. In tip number 37, we're going to talk about something that a lot of people don't actually take the time to do, and I don't know why, but I don't know. We'll talk about that, and I'll share my suggestions of why it's critical to look at the promotional announcements from other fire departments. Now, years ago, and I know this may be hard for some people to imagine, and don't take that in a condescending way, or I don't mean it that way, but when I grew up in my younger years, I didn't have the internet available to me. I mean, to look at promotional announcements, or at the time, firefighter job announcements, I'd have to go to each city's, basically city hall, to their human resources department. In most cities would usually have a binder of the jobs that they were hiring for, as well as other jobs, because all the cities shared their job announcements with others to try to increase their candidate pool. Well, lo and behold, then what was it about, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago, Al Gore created the internet, and just joking, and made it a heck of a lot easier for all of us to access pretty much darn near everything we want. Now, it is really easy. So I'll talk about why this is critical, but I think it is critical to look at promotional announcements from other departments. And again, it makes it very easy to using the internet and social media. So let's talk about that. Now, before I get too far off track, and you may wonder, why the hell am I looking at other job announcements for other departments? Well, first of all, it doesn't mean that you have to look elsewhere. You may be very happy with your own current department, and that's fine. Or maybe you find actually a great, awesome opportunity to take advantage of. Even if you don't want to, maybe, and even if you don't want maybe the position, maybe you go through the process as well. And I'll talk about that as well too here. So, but to me, it doesn't hurt to look outside. You may find some awesome things that are out there. The grass isn't always greener. Don't get me wrong. Do your homework, do your research, but it doesn't hurt to look for a number of reasons. One, just to see what current industry trends are. I mean, just because your department does it a certain way, does it, meaning the promotional process, meaning they have maybe a written test, an oral interview, assessment center, doesn't mean that they won't change. Or look at promotional requirements. Just because your promotional requirements to take the test are a certain, way today doesn't mean they won't change. Just like your department's reading list for the written exam, just because it's this way today doesn't mean that it won't change for the future. So think about it. When a department is looking at upping their game and modernizing what they're doing, or just making sure they're doing the right things for promotional processes along with other things, they're going to look at what other departments are doing. When I managed our HR human resources division for a short little time, when I was the admin chief previously, I was always looking at what other departments were doing in the way of promotional processes, because I wanted to make sure our department's process was doing the latest, greatest things. And you know what? Every now and then I'd find some great things to do to add to our process, just to make it more realistic. So take a look at other promotional applications and flyers. Also, you may find a great opportunity. I've already touched on that, but it is amazing how many people have actually seen job flyers for other departments. They go, you know what, actually, that sounds pretty interesting, or that seems like a great opportunity. They apply. The next thing you know, they're getting a job offer when they really weren't even planning on leaving their current department. But then they end up finding an awesome place to work in a new department, and they find a great opportunity. I mean, stranger things have happened. And I think that's why it's always good to keep your eyes open and never say never. And I talked about this as well too. If you see a certain trend, when I say trend, the trend could be in promotional process events, meaning um, what do they what makes up their process? Written test, oral interview, assessment center that may include writing exercises, fireground simulations, role play exercises, in basket exercises. You may start seeing certain trends that what other departments are doing. And I'll use another good example. Years ago, when I was preparing for the captain's test, I was looking at other captain job flyers beside our own. And I was able to obviously use the internet to find a lot of other captains processes. Now, a lot of departments don't really go to the outside for captain. It's rare for a department to go outside for captain, lieutenant, company officer. Um, Even battalion chief is rare. Obviously, departments usually go outside for firefighters, occasionally laterals, but usually firefighters, because that's where they usually get your entry level candidates, or usually the specialized positions, or maybe even just higher up positions, fire chief, deputy chief, assistant chief, that may not have a lot of internal interests. They have to go to the outside. But I remember when I was preparing for the captain's test, I was also looking at the step above, battalion chief job flyers. And I remember seeing a lot of departments upping their battalion chief requirements. And at the time, to be a battalion chief in our department, I think the requirements were you had to be a captain of 3 years, and that was about it. Captain 3 years, you could take the battalion chief's test. Well, I saw a lot of departments requiring not just 3 years, but 4 years, but also some level of education, like 2-year degrees, even 4-year degrees, as well as other state certified classes and other credentials. So as I was preparing for captain and also looking at battalion chief beyond that, I was starting to put my career roadmap together of, okay, if I eventually want to get to battalion chief, I better start maybe doing these things. And even if my department never went to that level of requiring those things, or, maybe, requiring that level of education or experience, it's okay. I still benefited because I was making myself a more well-rounded candidate. And that was the key. Well, lo and behold, about 10, 12 years ago, our department, I was already a battalion chief, our department changed our battalion chief requirements. And then they all of a sudden, it wasn't just, upping the experience, it was also requiring a 4-year degree. And I remember when the fire chief made that decision and sent it out to the entire department, that saying, hey, you know what, starting with the next test, we're going to now require our battalion chiefs to have a 4-year degree. And I can't remember the exact time frame was. You would have thought that, I mean, I don't know, most people were just blindsided by that, even though we tried to give enough. It wasn't like effective today. It was, we gave like a number of years to grandfather people in, meaning, and then there was going to be a sunset, meaning, the requirements are going to change like in 5 or 6 years. And so you better start preparing and planning ahead. And obviously at the time, online education makes it a heck of a lot easier to get your degree, especially from a firehouse, and we have a very generous tuition reimbursement program. So there's really not a lot of barriers to getting education unless you don't want to do it. I mean, that's sometimes what it comes down to. But we made it, I mean, pretty painless for the most part, even to the point where the tuition reimbursement covers most of the cost of the degree. So you just got to figure out how to make it happen. That's the hard part for some people, is actually doing the work. But anyway, it shocked the crap out of people. And there was some people that, you can't do this. You can't change requirements. Yes, we can. And some people brought up some great arguments that there are many great current chief officers that don't have a 4-year degree, let alone a 2-year degree. I'll agree there are. But our fire chief at the time said it best. He goes, okay, folks, he goes, I get the frustration. And at the command staff, pretty much all of us have master's degrees or bachelor's degrees. So we all believe in education. And obviously it didn't hurt us in the process. Doesn't mean we're better than anybody else. But his point was well stated. He goes, I'm not saying that it makes you a better battalion chief. However, it can provide you a lot of tools and resources that we just can't provide you on the job. Because education does provide a lot of different things. I mean, if you have to take the time to complete, reports, projects on time, essays, think about what a battalion chief does, and even higher chief officer positions, writing, critical thinking, problem solving, all those things that are known as soft skills that you're taught, or not necessarily taught, but have to complete to successfully complete a degree. But anyway, his point was that, listen, he goes, besides providing you a lot of things that I can't provide you, it's also helping us solidify that we don't ever have to go to the outside for fire chief, because he goes, if we get to the point where we have such a limited applicant pool for fire chief in the future, especially limited applicant pool that doesn't have any formal education, let alone a 2-year degree, if not a 4-year degree, he goes, it's going to force the board of supervisors, his bosses, to go to the outside. Because I mean, a fire chief in the Silicon Valley, one of the major metropolitan areas that, you know, makes easily six-figure incomes, and before you say that's a heck of a lot of money for, not for the Bay Area cost of living, trust me, your dollar goes farther in other parts of the country, but I digress. But his point was well stated in the sense that it's not uncommon to have city council members, because we serve 7 different cities, city council members, the board of supervisors, all looking at him going, how can you justify promoting a battalion chief, a mid-level manager, or hire an executive level chief like myself, deputy chief, or an assistant chief that doesn't even have a 4-year degree, let alone a 2-year degree? And when you think about most department heads in normal city government, you know, it's not uncommon. I mean, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. So his point was that, you know what, he goes, I want to continue to be able to provide a good candidate pool from the inside, so we keep our rich tradition and history, and we know our department's culture, and we can keep it going in the right direction. You know, and I know that still struggled, some people struggled with that, but it was, the point was, you know what, we need to raise the bar, because at some point we don't want to have the bar taken away from us. So good, better, and different, it makes sense, at least to me. And hopefully the point is that not every department requires a 4-year degree for battalion chief. Some don't even require a 2-year degree. But again, if you look at your pipeline up to fire chief, most fire chief positions require a 4-year degree, with usually master's degree is desirable. I mean, I know there are some exceptions, and some people make fire chief in today's world without even a 2-year degree, but those are far and few. And plus, those people usually maybe don't always have the skill sets necessary to be put at that level. Again, I'm saying there's exceptions to every rule, but sometimes the education can't hurt. But you got to see the trends, and one way to see the trends is by looking at what other departments are doing. You know, I've talked about, you may find an opportunity elsewhere, and that may be so true. And here's something to think about too. When I took my first fire chief examination back in 2018, I really wasn't looking elsewhere. I was looking internal. I was looking at, you know what, I'm going to go through the ranks and hopefully get the opportunity to be fire chief where I currently work in Santa Clara County Fire. Well, lo and behold, I was probably quite naive thinking that way, because I shouldn't have put all my eggs in our basket, because I was not the heir apparent and I was not the golden child. And that's okay. Looking back at it, it wasn't meant to be. But my point is that what I probably should have done if I wanted to be a fire chief at my department or even elsewhere, I should have taken some fire chief tests elsewhere. Number one, I might have found a good opportunity, but number two, it would have been good practice. Because think about it. When you're going for entry-level firefighter, odds are you didn't get hired on your first test. You probably had to take multiple tests to get hired. So you're sort of getting your groove on when it comes to interviews. I mean, you don't just, and here's the problem. If you haven't had an interview for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and all of a sudden you've been a good, happy firefighter engineer, next thing you know, you want to be a captain, 20 years on the job, you're going to be rusty as hell. And that's why it may not be a bad thing to try to get some experience doing some oral interviews. So when you do get to the one that you want, your department, I'm assuming, then you've had, you're sort of like a well-oiled machine. You don't want to be a robot. You don't want to be memorized. You don't have memorized answers, but you want to not also be so out of touch and out of practice that you sound really bad because someone else is going to outshine you. But there, it doesn't hurt to apply elsewhere. You can always say no to the job, and maybe you find a great position, but also do your homework. Now, finding positions in other departments is typically limited to, like I mentioned, occasionally lateral firefighter positions. But here's the challenge. As we all know, when we're on the job as a firefighter, you can be a 20-year firefighter with the San Francisco Fire Department, and then let's say you want to go work for FDNY or Boston or LA or whatever department. Yeah, your 20 years in San Francisco is great, but you know what? You're probably going to start from square one at the new department, probably going through rookie school with everybody else, people that have never been in the fire department. You're probably starting at square one when it comes to benefits, when it comes to vacation time, sick leave accruals, and all those other things. So that's why you don't usually see a lot of firefighters jumping ship to another department unless it's a promotional opportunity where there's usually more money, better benefits, or their situation is just so terrible they got to get out of there. Most departments don't do lateral firefighter positions. They will hire laterals, but they won't usually bring them over at the same pay that you had at your previous department, same seniority, because most of the unions, if I was a union member, when I was a union member in our department, deputy chief and higher is not union represented, but when I was a union member, I wouldn't want my department bringing in a guy from any department and bringing his seniority over. Nothing personal, but you know what? You got to start square one, because what about all the time I put into the position? I mean, that's how it works. Not saying it's right. Like I mentioned, you may find occasional company officer positions. You may find obviously chief officer positions, definitely fire chief, deputy assistant, battalion chief on occasion, maybe specialized positions. Like our department created a specialized battalion chief position. We've got shift battalion chiefs. We have staff battalion chiefs. So we have 9 shift battalion chiefs, 3 on A shift, 3 on B, 3 on C. We've got a 40-hour training battalion chief, a 40-hour operations division battalion chief. And at the time, we had a 40-hour support services battalion chief, but we since changed that to a wildland, and I can't remember the exact title. It's a long title, but it's a good, important position. It's basically specific to wildland fire behavior. And where I'm based in San Jose and where I work, it's very heavily wildfire urban interface area. And even, definitely in our first 2 areas, in our county, in our state, and on the West Coast. So we created a 40-hour wildland battalion chief position. It's just a 40-hour office position, but to focus really on wildfire preparation, to help with training, to help with fire prevention, to help with community education. Well, this is a position that we talked to our current battalion chiefs, and most of them all recognized, even though it would be a good opportunity, because it may be a good opportunity for them to take and then maybe go up to deputy chief for those that want to go up to deputy chief. But a lot of shift battalion chiefs don't want to go to a 40-hour week. But most of the battalion chiefs, I was surprised, they actually said go to the outside, because even though we have a lot of great wildfire experience from a lot of deployments, we have some great qualified battalion chiefs, of all ranks, but definitely battalion chiefs that could do the job. But even those guys were all saying, you know what, we need to go to the outside and hire someone with a lot of experience in wildfire from CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE is the state agency. And we ended up hiring a battalion chief that just retired from CAL FIRE, 25 plus years of experience, lots of mutual aid experience, lots of deployments. The guy brings a ton of subject matter expertise in wildfire. We hired him as a specialized position, and I've heard no complaints. It's rare for a department our size to hire from the outside for especially a battalion chief position. But you know what? He was the right fit for the right person, the right fit for the position because of his experience. So he's doing a great job. But again, there are sometimes unique opportunities. But here's the key. When you're going to the outside or thinking about the outside, do your homework, do your research, because the first question that should come to mind is, why are they having to hire from the outside? And especially a department like mine, the only people we usually hire from the outside are the entry-level positions. Or like I mentioned, that battalion chief wildfire mitigation position. I had somebody call me about the position, the first question they asked is, hey, Steve, I'd love to work for you guys. Great pay, great benefits, great department, great reputation. But why do none of your current 11 battalion chiefs want the position? And then I explained to them, I go, well, it's not that they don't want the position. They all agreed pretty much that it's a specialized position. We need to go to the outside and get someone that's got that experience. Plus, it's not someone that we want to have be a shift battalion chief, jump on into that position for a year or two just to be able to use it as a stepping stone to step up to deputy chief, because we want someone that's going to hopefully stay a few years, which this person that we hired will. And that was a good reason. However, there's many times though, when I've talked to other departments that are hiring battalion chiefs or especially captains, the first question on my mind is, usually it's not a problem getting firefighters or engineers to step up to captain. And it's a little tougher to maybe find captains to step up to battalion chief, and really tougher to find battalion chiefs to step up to the higher positions. I get it. But when you see departments testing the outside for captain, why? What's the red flags? There's got to be red flags why nobody wants to step up. Are they not interested, not qualified? Does the leadership suck? I mean, there's got to be good reasons. Sometimes there are good reasons, but sometimes it's like, stay the heck away. But one person's junk is another person's treasure, as they say. Sometimes do your research as well, because sometimes, like in this position, I had somebody else call me up and they go, hey, do you already got a guy inside that you're just going through the process to, go through the process just to make it a formality? And I go, no. I go, to the best of my knowledge, no, we have qualified people, but I don't think we have anyone qualified that's actually applying. So I don't think it's just a rubber stamp, because there are some processes where you go through and, the press release, after an extensive nationwide search of, countless applicants, we found that the best person for the position was actually homegrown in our own department. So we're promoting so-and-so up to this position. It's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I could have figured that out. But that is not necessarily a bad thing, because maybe that department only had the one person. So, I mean, and a lot of times the civil service rules of a department or the human resource rules require them that if there's only one candidate, or sometimes less than three, you've got to go to the outside. So I get it. And also something to think about is, even if there are 4 or 5 internal candidates, like we recently went out to the outside for a deputy chief of fire prevention, a very specialized position. We did also a nationwide recruitment for that. Got a ton of applicants. We actually had 5 internal applicants for deputy chief of fire prevention, which is unheard of. I mean, that's awesome. And again, I had people from the outside. Steve, is this, why are we hiring from the outside? I go, well, it's a specialized position. We do have internal applicants, but I'm not sure if we have that right fit. I mean, we have people with experience, but there's a lot of things that come into play for a deputy chief of fire prevention, a highly political position, overseeing 30 plus people in that division. And again, serving 7 cities, very highly political with a lot of landmines. I mean, it takes that right person. And we want, so the same thing. Why do we hire from the outside? I mean, there was 5 internal people, but I think there was only 1 or 2 from the fire prevention side. The rest were from the operations side, which is not a bad thing. But going from operations to fire prevention, that's a big leap, just because of the politics and everything else that usually goes on in every department. Now, the next point here, is it a formality? And I have people go, is that just a formality? I go, no, we got 5 candidates. One of them may get the position. One of them may not. We actually hired someone from the outside from a neighboring department. He just retired as a deputy chief of fire prevention from a neighboring department. He came on board, even with 5 internal candidates he competed against. He was the best fit for the position. He comes with a lot of background in that position, and he'll do an awesome job. So, but again, you never know that, and that's why I tell people, just go through the process. You never know. And if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. Don't take it personal. It could be challenged, coming from the outside. That's why I've always, for the few fire chief positions I put in for from the outside, you got to do your homework and do your research, because for all the reasons I've talked about, I mean, for any rank, could be captain, could be battalion chief, but there's a lot of history to learn. One of the biggest things, going from one city fire department to another, is probably not a big deal. There's still history to learn, obviously, politics, landmines. But like in my department, we're county by name, but we're a special district. We're a special fire district by definition. We serve 7 cities plus, county unincorporated areas. So my fire chief has 7 city councils, this county board of supervisors, plus 2 fire districts as well. He's got like 10 bosses. Well, count more than that because of all the individuals that are board soups and city council members. Oh yeah, you want to talk about complexity. I've been on the job, 25 years in my current department. I'm still learning something new because of how complex we are. It's not bad or good, it's just different. So someone coming from a city department into a district, special district like us, could be challenging to learn all the history and the landmines and everything else, the politics. Not impossible, people have done it, but you just have to be very aware of what you're going to. Versus myself going from one special district, say, to another special district, could be not that different, just different players, different politics, different history. But if I was to go to, say, a city fire department, it could be easier, it could be more difficult, I don't know. But it can also be the best thing that happens to your career. So always keep your eyes open. You can always say no. What's the worst they could do? Offer you the job? Say no. So I guess the message to share is, keep your head on a swivel. Never say never. Follow your dreams, do your research, and most importantly, do what it takes to ensure when you're on your deathbed, you can say you did the best for your family and yourself, ultimately. As always, I can't thank you enough for the gift of your time. Here's my social media footprint. As always, feel free to reach out. I'm a resource to everybody. Until the next time, be safe, take care, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day.